Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone that has joined us today. My name is Ismail Nalwala. I'm the CEO of IOTAP, and IOTAP is the creator of Work 365. This session is being recorded. Today, we're planning to go for about 45 to 50 minutes, a little bit longer than our usual webinars. There's just a lot to cover today, but hopefully you will find the presentation and the materials useful. I have Samantha Pika, who's a product specialist on our team, on the product management team, and then Yusuf Khatri as well with me, our CTO, who leads the engineering and development team. I'm expecting we will have a lot of questions as we go through our presentation. So if you could put them in the chat window, we will make sure we have enough time at the end of the presentation to cover all of the things that come up during this time. Okay, so let's get to this. All right, the agenda. So NCE is on top of mind for everyone today. So the three main things we're going to cover today is NCE, NCE, and NCE. Actually, yeah, so we'll certainly cover a lot of NCE stuff, and then also some features that are coming up in 4.0 that will hopefully be helpful. And we'll try to spend a good chunk of time, as I said today, addressing questions and sharing some guidance and things we're going to be doing to support the upgrades and the process around transitioning all your subscriptions to NCE. During the registration, some of you submitted questions, and we'll cover those as well, along with what I think is some of the best practice guidance. And hopefully you all have the questions window available for you to post them as they come up, all right? Good, let's get to the next topic. Yes. So for those of you that are new to Work 365, just a quick introduction. We're a subscription management and billing automation application that helps you scale and streamline your processes around subscription management and recurring revenue. Work 365 really has four major application areas. It's basically around subscription management and provisioning, as I said, billing automation, we have self-service, and we also do payments in the application. We're built on Dynamics 365, so you can use Work 365 as a native application in CRM. And you're also able to leverage the power of the Power Platform, including Power Apps, Power Portals, Power Automate, Power BI to accomplish much more. We support multi-currency, multi-language environments, and we have users using the application around the world, actually. So, all right, the first topic we want to talk about is NCE. So I'm going to be using screenshots today because we just have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, and it just makes it a little bit easier to cover the content that way. The first thing I want to talk about is some dates. We've been working on the NCE release, which is going to be 4.0 for us now for the last several months. And of course, Microsoft is also still working on NCE and figuring out a lot of the NCE things just like us. This, I believe, is the latest slide, and things could have even changed since we put this in the deck. But one thing we're hearing consistently is this March 10th date, where Microsoft is saying that there will be no more legacy SKUs after March 10th. What happens to existing SKUs seems to be a little bit fluid. You can renew them until July. So that means a customer whose renewal falls between now and July can get another year on the same subscription, but after July, they would have to renew with the NCE SKU. So if you deactivate a SKU and then reactivate another SKU, I don't think that's going to work after March 10th. We're certainly not the authority on all the NCE stuff or the dates, so please take this with a grain of salt, I guess. This is based on what we've actually gathered recently. So also, I would also request that, if you have questions around NCE, let's keep this session focused on the conversation around the practical implications and not something, that is an NCE feature or what Microsoft is likely to do, because we just won't be able to answer that with any certainty at the moment. All right. So this is what I was referring to, which is these dates seem to be really important. Incentives are aligned with these things, and subscription changes will, subscriptions will, you won't be able to do any legacy subscriptions after March. So I have a quick poll that I'd like to just share out. If you don't mind answering this, that would be very helpful. And then I will also share this so that you can see what others are saying. All right, we have about 55% of the folks that have responded. We'll give it another 20, 30 seconds. Okay, that's great. Actually, we're still getting some responses. I'll just hold off for another 10 seconds. All right, that's good. So this is what we have. Actually, it's pretty interesting. A lot of you are already doing it. That's good. That's great. Some of you are small percentages looking to do it next quarter, but majority of the folks are just going to do it as soon as they can. That's great. Okay. All right. Let's get to the next slide. Yeah. So what I'll talk about today, as far as NCE is concerned, is basically these specific things. How you can do subscription management and provisioning in Work 365 with NCE, and then what the considerations are really about annual and monthly contracts. All right. Now, we're hearing from a lot of partners that they want to do annual subscriptions in February because, as we all know, the annual SKUs have a discount. It's better for cash flow, and there's an additional incentive of 5% in transacting before March. That seems to be a big driver for a lot of the partners, actually, to transact in NCE because of these two main reasons, right? The new SKUs can't be provisioned in March, and then additional 5% incentive runs out as well. So let me walk you through how this is going to potentially work, right? In Work 365, you'd set up billing contracts. So I've set up a billing contract here. In this case, I've set it up as an item-based billing contract. Now, this is a brand new billing contract type in Work 365. Currently, we have recurring and non-recurring contracts that show up in two separate forms. In 4.0, there will be a setting on a contract to select the type to determine whether it's an item-based contract or a recurring contract. We'll get into some of this in much more detail in future calls, but I'll also explain some of this in a little bit further in the presentation. All right, so I have a contract here. I'm going to treat this as an NCE contract. It's an item-based contract. Now, once the contract has been set up, you would want to transition, migrate, or create a new NCE subscription. This is something you'd have to do in Partner Center. I'm not going to go and log into Partner Center at the moment, but assume you've already done that. This is a product that I provisioned a product in Partner Center, and it was an annual commitment. Okay, so you could have either a monthly billing frequency or an annual billing frequency. In this case, the contract is an annual frequency, and the commitment term was also an annual commitment term for the product. I would basically sync it into the billing contract, and when I sync the subscription, I'm basically provided with the specific subscription that is available in Partner Center for this particular customer. Notice there's a checkbox here. I would select a specific subscription that I want to include in this billing relationship. There could be more than one. In this instance, there's only one. Right? I'm going to essentially confirm that this particular subscription is going to get synced into this billing contract. And when I sync it, I will then be able to see specific things that happen behind the scenes. So if you don't have the product in the catalog, the product will get created. You'll notice there's pricing that'll appear as well. This is an annual commitment, so there's an annual price here. And the part number also changes. I think I have highlighted some of these things. Actually, this is also important to highlight. With NCE, the segment also becomes really important. Each price list, each product will be available in a specific price list that is going to be targeted towards a specific segment. In this case, it's commercial, and it's basically highlighted here as a commercial product with an annual sales unit. All right, the subscription form has changed a little bit, and I'll show you some of the changes. We've moved some of the fields over into the advanced tab. As you see here, this is the advanced tab here, and within the advanced tab, you'll be able to see the modification behavior. In this case, there's a modification behavior of control around 3 days. So within 3 days, the quantity can be changed. After 3 days, the quantity won't be editable. There's also a billing schedule that appears here that's associated with the subscription. This is really important for item-based contracts. Each subscription itself will drive its own billing schedule, which is why this appears on the subscription form. Now you'd be able to add more annual subscriptions into this billing contract, and each annual subscription will have its own billing schedule that'll drive the billing from there on, right? See if I can break this down a little bit and explain it, right? So in the Partner Center or with Microsoft, there's thousands of these products, right? Lots of products. Now, if you break this down, basically there are seat-based products, there's usage and consumption, and then there's some of these hybrid products, right? So how do you bill all these out is really what I want to talk about next. So taking the products into these further categories from a billing standpoint, you have terms, right? You're either going to have monthly terms, which is your monthly, which is your commitment. Either it's monthly or annual or triennial. Your billing frequency, basically how you want to bill your customer, either it's monthly or annual, and when you want to bill them, in advance or in arrears, right? We take all of this and kind of map it into the Work 365 application. So in Work 365, you've got accounts. An account can have one or more billing contracts, which can either be recurring or item-based. And each billing contract can have one or more subscriptions, right? And the subscriptions can be either license or usage-based. Now, with all this here, what I want to show you next is the specific guidance on how you would potentially map these subscriptions into the right billing contract. So these first 3 rows are really important, right? I think this is kind of the key thing to look out for in the next month as as you transition SKUs. So if you're selling a monthly commitment term, which would be billed monthly, you would use the recurring contract that's already there and potentially set the date to an indefinite date in the future. If you're selling an annual commitment term billed annually, you would use the item-based contract that I just showed you. If you're selling an annual or triennial term on a monthly basis, you could use the recurring contract that already exists in 3.7 and all our previous releases as well. The billing schedule for an item-based contract will be based on the subscriptions and not at the contract level. So that's really important to keep in mind. For those of you that haven't seen this, it's going to be all the new stuff that we will cover in future webinars and training calls as well. So this is how we see it. If you're basically doing monthly term, monthly billing, use the existing recurring contract. It should work for you. If you're doing item-based stuff that's annual, use this new contract type. All right, we'll keep going here. I have another quick poll that I'd like to share. Okay, I'm going to close the poll out. Looks like we have most of the votes in. Very interesting. I will share this as well. So almost 50% of the folks here on the call think that they're going to bill annual commitment terms with an annual frequency of billing, which means you're collecting the cash up front, and then the rest of you, most of you think that the other half thinks that it depends on the customer. It's interesting. Okay, I will continue here with the presentation. All right, so now I'm going to digress a little bit from NCE and talk about some of the features that are coming up in upcoming release with 4.0. This is exciting stuff, actually. So three things I'll talk about today. One is the report scheduler, which some of you may already be aware of, but I want to make sure you get a reminder and know how to use it. Then we'll talk about the subscription, linked subscription capability in the system and some changes on the subscription management side as well. And then there's another cool feature which is really something that dives back into the platform itself. All right, so let's look at the report scheduler. So we've covered this feature in a previous call, but really I want to remind everybody again about it. It's going to become really important with NCE for you to know what is actually going on in the system. Right, so you want to know which subscriptions are provisioned, if there's any issues, and this report scheduler feature is going to be useful for that. If you're on the Work 365 Essentials plan, you will be able to use this feature to send scheduled emails to anyone in your company for the data and the events that occur within Work 365, right? Or actually anything in CRM, really. It could be something that's not related to Work 365. You could still use the report scheduler. There are many use cases for this, and these are some of the examples, right? You could set up a view to see what invoices were created today, what licenses were provisioned, various scenarios that you could think of, and you can schedule these reports and have them delivered to you in your email. I'll walk you through that. So this is an example. I've created a view here, a simple view. The idea for this view is basically to show me subscriptions that were created in the last 24 hours. I intentionally didn't put the active filter on the subscription on this view because I want to see everything that happened regardless of whether it was active or inactive, right? And you can create any view that you want in the system based on the data and the fields that are available in the application. So this is a view, it's a simple view. Now, I can go into the reports area in Work 365 and set this view up. So this is an example of that. I've created this particular report in the report scheduler. It says, show me subscriptions that were created in the last 24 hours. This is kind of what the settings look like, where you'd give it a name, anything you want, pick the entity that you want to use for the view, select the view, set up a frequency. Right here, what I'm doing is basically specifying that I want it sent to me every day at 6 p.m. I can do some grouping and some sorting as well, and then who's going to get this email, right? Now, this is an example of what comes up in my email. I just did this test email. I got this in my email. Basically, what it's telling me is these 3 subscriptions were created in the last 24 hours. Now, each of these links are clickable links. And as I mentioned, I could group this by anything. In this case, I've grouped it by provider, which is, show me anything that's happened in this part in the partner center. Okay, great. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is some of the changes on the subscription side, and then we'll talk about that linked subscription as well. There's a new feature in the application called subscription hierarchy. Some of you may have already seen that. What this allows you to do is look at the entire relationship of all the subscriptions in the application. This is available in 3.7. So, I'm able to see what's active, what's inactive. It also flags what's billable and not billable. So these are all the subscriptions that are actually available in this particular billing contract that I have in the system called, Blue Yonder Canada. There's a whole bunch of them, but currently only a handful of them are actually still active and billable. All right. You could also use this view at a subscription level. So now I've opened up one of those subscriptions, and if I clicked on the subscription hierarchy, I can see that this particular subscription actually has a child subscription. It's the Microsoft phone system that was attached to it as an add-on, okay, to the E3 plan. All right. Now, finally, on the subscription side, I want to talk about this new feature that's coming out in 4.0. This is actually brand new. It's not available in 3.7 at the moment. It's a feature that's called linked subscription. Actually, it's a provider called linked subscription, and I'll show you the use case in which this is really important. So, think about an example where you have one main tenant with several locations that want to manage their subscriptions independently, right? And this is kind of what it looks like. So this happens in franchise scenarios quite a bit, where there's one HQ and multiple child locations. It could be stores, regional offices that need to have their own services allocated, but most importantly, provision at the single tenant level, but billed at the location level. It's fairly complex to manage this from a provisioning and billing standpoint if you're doing it manually. And if you want to automate it, this linked subscription capability will help with that. The main issue here is that there's one customer tenant with child billing relationships. In this case, we'll look at this example of this E1 subscription with 7 seats. All right, and there's the sub 1 and sub 2, which are the locations. The sub 1 has 4 seats. The sub 2 has 3 seats. Right? How do you manage this easily? Now, what you typically do is have a parent company with child companies set up in the system. This is an example of that. This is a particular example in our demo environment for this company called Top Floor Elevator, right? Top Floor Elevator is the parent company. It's got two child locations, sub 1 and sub 2. What we've done is created 3 billing contracts for this. 1 for the parent, 2 for the child locations, right? And that particular E1 subscription is set up as at the parent level in this case with 7, right? And we'll look at how the child subscriptions are set up. So this is the child subscription for the sub, which now has a provider type linked subscription. And it's actually linked to that parent subscription right here. This has the quantity of 4, and the sub 2 also is configured in a similar fashion, linked subscription with the parent subscription here, and a quantity of 3. Now, any change I make to these subscriptions will actually link back to that linked subscription and update the quantity there and actually provision the quantity in the tenant directly. Right, so how do you use this? Essentially, one main subscription that'll be provisioned with the provider. You can manage the billing at the location, and you can manage subscription provisioning at the tenant level. This allows also the end customer to manage all the locations through the self-service portal, or any one specific location as well through the self-service portal. So you can give them permissions to manage all the accounts and all the relationships, or just one particular account that they're associated with. So I know a lot of folks talk about this and deal with situations where they have to support this kind of scenario, and hopefully this will help with that. All right, so we're almost there. The last thing I want to show you is a kind of a cool feature that we didn't build, but we'll take credit for showing you in this case, in case you weren't already using it, right? So this is the Teams integration with Dynamics. And this is kind of one of the main reasons we built Work 365 the way we did, as I mentioned earlier, is because of the power of the platform, right? The power of the Power Platform and the integration with all the other apps. Microsoft spent a lot of time last year, actually, in Inspire last year, talking about the Teams integration with Dynamics. So I'll show you what that looks like. In the Sales app, you'd see these settings. Basically, you'd go to the Sales app under the Settings area. You'd possibly find chat and collaboration. I've turned on these settings here, and then I added the billing contract entity as one of the records or the record types that I'm interested in using with Teams. Once you're done with this setting, you can use it in this particular fashion, right? So in this case, what I'm showing you is some of the top 10 billing contracts I have in the system, and I'm interested in working on these So what would I do? I'd open up one of these billing contracts, and you'll notice that there's going to be a chat option up on the top. Okay, once you click on that, it'll present you the option, the opportunity to start a Teams chat. All right, and you can do that by clicking that button up on the top and using that option to start the new linked chat. And it's going to present you with some options on who you want to communicate with. In this case, since I was a billing contract owner, I actually appear as one of the participants for the chat by default. Here's a message for me. Should we transition them to NCE? And you can start the chat right from Dynamics Work 365 using this Teams integration. All the messages are linked and stored. And you know, it just makes it really easy to collaborate using Teams and Dynamics. All right. Okay, so finally, some announcements before we get to the fun stuff with the easy questions, hopefully on NCE. We will be doing dedicated NCE office hours on Wednesday and Friday, starting next week. The idea for these office hours are going to be really to help users transition to NCE when we release the application. The application is going to, be available first week of February. So next week we should post, and we will possibly post an announcement on our Yammer site, and you'll start seeing it become available in your application as well for you to upgrade. We're also going to be starting a Slack channel for all our customers that are onboarding and need to actually engage with us. This is a brand new thing we're launching actually now. I'm pretty excited about that. The other thing I want to mention is, our billing model, our pricing is based on the number of billing contracts you have in the system. And we understand that, during the next couple of months, as you transition between the legacy and the NCE side of things, there's probably going to be a lot of turmoil, some changes with what you need to do on the billing contract side. So we're actually suspending all the billing contract metering until March 31st. So use the application as you wish and as you need to support your needs. You're not going to be hearing from us on your billing contract thresholds or packs. The other thing I want to mention is that we're going to be doing a detailed, in-depth demo on the features for NCE once the application's made available to our users on Feb 10th. So once the application is generally available, hopefully you can get it installed and working, and then we'll do another deep dive and touch on a lot of these things. And that'll be a user or customer session only, won't be open to non-users. All right. Now, with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions. And we already have some questions that we received, as I said earlier. And I'm going to have Samantha and Yusuf come online with me, and we'll actually turn on our video so we can actually start the conversation around things that are on top of mind for the folks that are concerned about all these things that are going on. So let's see if I can turn on my video here. All right, great, awesome. Hey, Sam.
Hi.
Hey, Yusuf.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Yeah. How are you today?
Good. All right, good stuff.
So,
Sam, do you want to kick us off with?
Yeah, I noticed there were some questions already in the chat, and I thought we could start with those. And then the other questions that we had noted earlier from, customers that we've talked to the last few weeks here, I thought we could address those.
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Works, yeah.
So the first question we have in the chat is, as we played with Newcomers Experience, we discovered it is not days, but hours from the time of deployment. Are you guys doing days or hours? I think this is probably in terms of like the provisioning side of things. When you are provisioning a new NCE SKU, like how quickly does that go into Partner Center or sync back from Partner Center perhaps? Which
so I think, Sam, what we probably should do is let's do this. we'll switch gears a little bit. Let's go with the questions we already have.
Okay.
Then for the questions from the audience, we'll basically turn on the audio so that they can participate through live conversation instead of trying to guess
Interpret.
what. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so these are basically questions that we've noted the past few weeks as we are in discussions with our customers as they're adding NCE SKUs and things like that. So I'm just gonna kind of run through our list here. So a common question is, will my existing legacy subscriptions continue to be supported with the billing and provisioning side of things in Work 365? Which the answer is yes. Everything will, for legacy SKUs, there shouldn't be any impact. The behavior and logic in the application will remain the same for legacy SKUs in terms of billing and provisioning. So you shouldn't see any impact there. Another question is, how is Work 365 going to handle the billing changes with newcomers experience when subscription terms may be different? So keep in mind right now with the application, we have 3 different billing frequencies that we support: monthly, annually, and quarterly. And that also equates over to the terms, monthly, annually, and quarterly terms. So those will continue to be supported, but we are adding an additional term, which is the triennial term. There are some new commerce experience SKUs. I think most of them are dynamic SKUs from what I saw on the price list. But there are some SKUs where you can provision triennial based terms with your subscription. So we've added that term now into the application, which means you can have a subscription with a triennial term on like an item-based contract, perhaps in you're billing it annually, for example.
Yeah, and I just want to refer back to what we just shared, right? That chart is probably a good way to think about it. And we'll put that in an official knowledge article or something like that for folks to look at when they're thinking about how to support the billing for the different SKUs and commitment types. And then as we get more feedback, we'll certainly update the documentation as well. But, yeah, that chart is really one of the main things you should be considering when you're thinking about, do I put it in this type of contract or that type of contract, and how do I, do the rest of it? Yep.
Right, exactly. There is a couple questions that we've gotten related to renewals. So one is, how is Work 365 going to handle subscription renewals? Will they be auto-renewed, and will we get notifications of these auto-renewal based subscriptions? So there is a setting on the subscription form for auto-renew. By default, when you create a new subscription, that is set to auto-renew, so it's enabled by default, essentially. Right now, with the NCE changes, when your subscription is set to auto-renew, it will actually provision in Partner Center as auto-renew. So essentially in Partner Center, it will be auto-renewed if that is how it's set on the subscription. However, if you were to disable that setting so it doesn't auto-renew, then it will not auto-renew in Partner Center.
So I also want to add here, right, the renewal management side of things. You can certainly use the report scheduler to get notifications on renewal items. So if you set up a view to look at subscriptions that are going to renew in the next month, 2 months, whatever that is, and have that set up on a schedule, you'd get that email every week, every day if you wanted to get you information directly in your inbox and get notified on things you have to take action on. You can set up the view to get you alerts on the subscription level and at the billing contract level using either the end date on the billing contract or the commitment end date on the subscription.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff where the report scheduler becomes really helpful, is wanting to see what's going to happen in the application and when things have happened. Yep.
Thank you for that. So the next question is related to suspensions and cancellations. So everyone knows with new commerce experience now, there's going to be a 72-hour window cancellation policy, and people are wanting to know how Work 365 is going to handle or manage that. I think, Yusuf, this question would be a great one for you to answer.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So with 72-hour cancellation window, what happens is now this is applicable for NCE products, but the legacy ones don't have this. So the way we've implemented this is on the product level itself. We actually have two new fields that we've been added called quantity deduction behavior. I'll show those fields in the presentation. So by default for NCE products using the product service, these fields are automatically set to 72 hours, which means that if you try and reduce a quantity within 72 hours of modifying that or adding that quantity, it'll allow you to reduce that. But beyond that window, the system will effectively not allow you to do that. Now, this behavior applies to changes that you make directly within CRM, but also applies to any changes that your customers might make through the portal as well. But the portal release will be coming shortly, but this will apply across the board for the given subscription. So that's how we handle the 72-hour windows.
Excellent. And then also related to suspensions and cancellations, with kind of the update in Partner Center, there's a new status almost. So we have the cancellation of a subscription, but there's also an option to suspend a subscription. And how Microsoft is handling it is a little bit different. So now people are wondering, how are we going to handle that within the application? So what's kind of the difference between suspension versus cancellation, and how are we handling that in Work 365?
Right. So suspension effectively means that the subscription is quote unquote paused for that given time, which means that the customers cannot use the service, but billing continues. Microsoft's going to bill you for that subscription. Cancellation, on the other hand, means the subscription is effectively terminated, right? Which means that it's no longer being used, you're not going to get billed for it. Now, with NCE, Microsoft says, while you're in your term, you cannot cancel. You can suspend, but you can't cancel, which means that Microsoft continues to bill you for this period of time. The way we've traditionally handled this in the legacy side was, we only had suspended for us at that time meant that it was actually canceled. There was no real differentiation between suspended and cancellation with legacy. But that differentiation now with NCE that's come into play, this becomes very apparent. So what we've done is we've renamed what used to be called suspended in Work 365 is now called terminated. And we actually have a new status called suspended that reflects this specific scenario. So if you on the subscription form, you will see a new button called pause right at the top in the ribbon. You can click that button, and what that does is it effectively suspends the subscription, which means it locks. It obviously provisions that to Microsoft saying, hey, suspend this subscription, and it disallows any quantity changes for you, and the customers obviously not be able to use it. But at the same time, billing continues. Workspace continues to bill that subscription because it's still an active subscription, but unusable by the customer. So that's how we handle that. And you can pause and resume. Those functionalities are now available in the latest version.
Great, thank you, Yusuf. There is one additional question for the scheduling of license changes. So I know in Partner Center, that's kind of a new feature that was released in the UI of Partner Center. And, we've been handling scheduling of license changes for a while now, but how are we to handle that update in Partner Center related to the APIs?
So what actually happened is, like you mentioned, scheduling of changes. We have something called scheduled license changes for a while now. I think probably for a year now, at least, or more than a year. And the way we handle this is you can schedule a change, whether it's a price change or a quantity change or a suspension or an activation, deactivation, you name it, right? And that can be scheduled ahead of time. So if your customer says on renewal, I want to have 5 licenses added or 5 licenses reduced, or I don't want to continue the subscription, you can set those actions right away. And this works across for legacy as well as for NCE, right? The difference, I think, what Microsoft says is they allow you to do certain things at renewal. What we have right now is the date-based schedule, and I think we're considering getting more, this functionality aligned with the renewals. It's a renewal cycle of the subscription itself. I think that's coming. That is under consideration, and you should look out for that in a future release. But as of today, date-based renewals, you can set a date and say make the change on a specific date, and that just works. That works
Yeah,
today?
I think what we should do is just get some feedback on that, right? And maybe we can open it up to comments if someone has them. But yeah, I mean, scheduling changes, as you said, it's you can do it, but you have to specify what date.
Correct.
And that's, it could work fine. It does work now, but we should probably see what the feedback is and pick that up. Okay.
Sounds good. So there's another, I would say, common question that we get related to billing. So right now, if you have an annual subscription that you're committing to, a lot of people are starting to think, I want to collect the payment for that item in advance of the invoice actually generating. So, people are wondering, can we generate invoices in advance of the billing cycle? How will Work 365 support that? So essentially right now that is a
let me take a stab at that. So this is certainly going to become a big deal, right? Where nobody would want to incur costs if there's risk of getting paid, right? There's one feature that we already have, which is credit hold. Okay, so the credit hold's been there for a long time at the moment, which is if you put a customer, if you have a customer on credit hold, it stops any provisioning, prevents any provisioning. So usually this is helpful in the beginning of a relationship where you have a brand new customer, you'd have a credit hold you'd have the credit hold turned on, set up the billing contract, set up all the subscriptions. You would not provision because they would be in credit hold. You could bill them out and then release the credit hold, which will then eventually provision the subscriptions. You can always invoice in advance for existing customers. So, you have customers that are probably in flight with you right now that already engaged with you, but have a renewal coming up. You can certainly generate an invoice in advance using which billing cycle you want to invoice them for, right? That's possible. At the moment, we don't do any bulk invoice generation in advance, right? So that's something we could certainly consider, but just depends on what that would do. Because if you because you generate them in advance, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get paid. They have to be sent out, and anything that you create on an annual basis, you always want to review before you send out. So there should be a renewal process that you're going through rather than generating an invoice in advance. That's really what I'm trying to say is, look at what's going to get renewed, get that notification, put a renewal process in place, and whether you create an invoice in Work 365 at that point or later, it's a pro forma invoice. Any invoice in Work 365 is not an actual invoice that gets into your accounting system unless you actually push it into your accounting system. So every invoice there is potentially, a pro forma invoice. You can cancel them, delete them, regenerate them. It's all part of the process. So I know that was a long answer, but hopefully there's some guidance there on what we think. But we'd love to hear what some feedback is on this. Yeah.
All right, thanks. So another common question is, with some updates in Partner Center with New Commerce Experience, Microsoft has enabled the transition or conversion of certain SKUs. So if you have a trial subscription, converting that into a licensed subscription, as well as upgrades. So if you have like a lower SKU, like Microsoft 365 E3, and you wanted to upgrade that to Microsoft 365 E5, you have those features in Partner Center. People are wondering how are they going to handle that moving forward within Work 365. So the general guidance is right now you want to make those changes within Partner Center directly. So transition that trial subscription or upgrade that E3 to E5 subscription directly within Partner Center, and then go into the applicable billing contract that you'd like to make that change, and sync the subscription from there, essentially.
Yeah, and that's really an important point, right? So this is going to be a thing that happens not just for that transition, but generally not just from one type of SKU to the other type of SKU, but anything. The recommendation right now really is to perform all these actions in Partner Center, whether you're transitioning from monthly to annual or trial to paid or whatever that is. Do them in Partner Center and sync them back into Work 365. And actually, this brings me to another very important point. Going forward in 4.0, we're not going to automatically sync subscriptions from Partner Center, new subscriptions from Partner Center into Work 365. As of today, in 3.7, Work 365 automatically brings in any new subscriptions from Partner Center. And we're intentionally disabling that new subscription sync because we want to make sure it doesn't go into the wrong billing contract. You have to make that determination of which billing contract you intend that subscription to go into. So you'll have to engage with the application and make that determination when you have a new subscription from Partner Center. Any changes to that subscription going forward will resync back, but new ones we won't sync by default because they could go into the wrong place or not even get billed. And now we know that there's no cancellation, so you really want to make sure that they're going to the right home.
Correct. Yep. All right. So another question is related to the new commerce experience price list. Do we have the ability of pulling in that new commerce price list? How are we handling that within Work 365? Yusuf, I think that's probably a question for you related to the updates in the product service and the catalog.
Sure. So the short answer is Work 365 is going to pull, I guess, the NCE prices and the price list are going to come into Work 365 through the product service. Now, with 4.0, there are some major enhancements to the product service itself, right? For one, we are supporting up until now, we were only supporting the subscriptions, the Office 365 and the Dynamics 365 SKUs. But with version 4.0, we're now also supporting perpetual licenses. We're supporting reserved instances, software subscriptions, NCE Office 365, Dynamics Office NCE, and of course the legacy subscriptions as well. With having said that, in order for us to support all these new SKUs and the reforms that Microsoft itself has made to the pricing structure, what has now happened is the price lists themselves have new fields added. So you can now have a price list that's attached to a segment, which is a commercial price list or a government price list or a non-profit price list and so on and so forth, and also attached to certain markets and certain providers, right? So which means that one of the first things you need to do is to set up the price list as you transition over to, as you upgrade to 4.0, and there'll be guidance provided on that. But as we sync the prices from Partner Center, we will look at the product, the SKU that's being synced. Hey, this is a commercial product, so let me go find a price list that's marked as commercial for that specific segment. I'm going to put the price list there based on the term, right? So we are managing that within NCE, and I guess that's the gist of how it's going to work.
So Sam, just keeping an eye out on the time we have, how many more questions do we have? Should we open it up to the audience, or where are we at with that? Where are we at the list?
Yeah, there are quite a few questions in the audience, so we could jump there.
Yeah, so why don't we do this in a way where we can open it up and they can actually we can unmute them as well, and just make sure we're not. Do you know the sequence in which they came through?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
so
great.
starting with Matt, related to the they've been playing around with new commerce experience SKUs. Something about the NCE SKUs.
Should we just unmute Matt?
Yeah. Matt, I'm not 100% clear on your question. In terms of days versus hours from the time, are you referring to like in Partner Center directly or within Work 365 when a subscription is? Yeah, I think we can probably just skip that. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Is there a plan to consolidate items on one invoice? A customer with a large number of items could result in a large number of invoices and payment terms. So this question is from Elaine. And I think we were having that discussion earlier today. So with a item-based contract, there is an ability to consolidate. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sorry, Sam, I'm trying to figure out where that question is. What is that? Why don't we just unmute Elaine? Is there a plan to consolidate items into one? Yes. Yes. So is there a plan to consolidate items on one invoice? So Elaine, just so I can help you understand this, invoicing in Work 365 will be based on the billing contract type you set up. If you pick an item-based contract, it'll essentially generate invoices based on the terms in the item. If you put them in the recurring contract, it'll basically generate an invoice based on the terms of the recurring contract. So that's kind of the main consideration for you, which is, are you going to put in an item-based contract, which will essentially generate multiple invoices based on the terms of the item that you put in, or in a recurring contract, it's going to consolidate everything into one invoice.
Okay. Did we want to unmute Elaine or just continue?
Yeah, we can unmute Elaine, and I think we have a whole bunch of questions. You've got to move here quickly.
Yeah. Elaine, I've unmuted you. Does that make sense? Any questions or clarification?
No, it does make sense. It was more of I was picturing a large number of invoices per item, but if it's still per contract, then you could have multiple items in the item-based contract, then that works. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
you can have as many items in the item-based contract. It's just going to be billing based on when you put the items in there. So it could have multiple invoices, Elaine. That's the thing. The item-based contract will generate invoices based on what's being added to the item-based contract and the term and the duration of that item.
Okay, so if a customer wants one invoice in a month, is there an option to do that?
So you would do that in the recurring contract.
Okay.
In the current recurring contract. And if it's an annual, as I said, if it's an annual term with an annual payment, you wouldn't want to do that in your recurring contract because you're going to, there's no co-termination, right? Microsoft just started talking about co-termination yesterday. So this may happen, but at the moment, co-termination doesn't exist. It could happen in the future. There is no co-termination. That's the issue, right?
Yes, yeah, it is an issue, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks, Elaine.
All right, so the next question we have is related to the self-service portal. So when you're outside of that allotted window of 72 hours for reductions or those kinds of updates to subscriptions, how are we, like, are customers going to be able to reduce, or will they get blocked from reducing those subscriptions, and what is that experience going to be like? So Yusuf answered this question earlier in the webinar, but essentially it all depends on that setting of quantity reduction behavior on the subscription. So if you have that set to allow within window, within the 72-hour period, customers would be able to reduce the quantity, but beyond that window of 3 days or 72 hours, they would not be able to. So if they try to, it will basically error out on the self-service portal and say the quantity is reduction is not allowed, or I don't know specifically what the message says, but that would be the user behavior. So they would not be able to reduce that quantity.
Okay.
Any thoughts, or?
Let's see if we can keep going through these. There's a bunch of them. Yeah.
So another one is, how soon will the linked subscription option be available? We are doing this in a very messy way right now. So that will be available as part of the 4.0 release. So be on the lookout for that.
So that'll be potentially next week.
Yeah.
Sometime next week or the week after.
So then the next question, can we get a copy of the presentation? So I think the deck, I know that this webinar is being recorded, but I don't know if are we sharing the deck at all?
We don't share the presentation, Carrie. Sorry, yeah, but I think we'll have the recording available.
Right. Okay.
Will
Will
the
the
offers be covered? Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, be covering how to manage the 5% promotion pricing. So
Yeah, so I can answer that really quick. So the 5% promotion pricing would just be a discount that if you wanted to pass it on to the customer, you just apply it as a discount. I don't think there's necessarily a price change. Is that right? Does anybody know? I don't think there's an actual price discount, but you probably get a 5% rebate on your invoice from Microsoft. So you would just apply the 5% discount on the subscription itself.
got it. All right, so then the next one would be Chris. Can you please share the bit.ly link for the February 10th webinar again?
Yes.
Try navigating to it, but yeah, we can share that with you.
And we'll post it on Yammer as well. So just look out for that, please. Yep. That's going to be an important one. I'm sure everybody will have a lot of questions. So certainly all our users will be there.
Okay, so next question, will the NCE SKUs differ from the existing SKUs, and how do we add those into the product management, essentially the product service for Work 365? Do we have to do that manually, or will we handle that? So yes, the NCE SKUs will be different. They have a different part number. So they will have different products within the catalog. Note that when you are syncing NCE subscriptions from Partner Center into Work 365, depending on how you have the configuration settings set for the product service, we can actually create those NCE products for you automatically. So you would not, in that case, need to add them to the catalog manually. But either way, it will be supported. So yeah, anything else to add?
So there's actually one question here. I just want to clarify that. That sounds like someone's picking on us for a technical reason, but we'll make sure we address that. So you're displaying 3 days and you need to display the item in hours. So really it's a calculated field. Even if I put 72 hours in there, it's the same thing. So it's not 3 days, it's actually 72 hours in the system. So we're aware of that, and it's an easier way to display it. It's not literally day and 3. It's the period that's being presented as 3 days.
Right. Will the customer portal provide additional benefits to customers when managing their Azure subscriptions, so they can find advantages to switch Azure to a CSP partner that provides a Work 365 portal?
So yes, but it's in the works. So we're going to get to a nice Azure portal possibly by May, June. We're working on that, but it hasn't been released. So it's on the roadmap. It's an important thing. It's a priority for us. It'll be there.
And then with Azure billing, would we be able to specify a markup or margin based on cost or RRP?
Yeah, so simple, right? So in Azure, the way our Azure billing works is you get the cost and you add a markup. So 15% margin is a 17.64% markup. That's how it works in the system. And
that's what the default markup is on your Azure subscriptions, but you are allowed to modify or adjust that markup on a per Azure subscription basis. So will Work 365 handle upgrading NCE licenses to approved upgraded SKUs? So the way to handle that, you'd be completing that upgrade within Partner Center. So whatever the approval or approved SKUs are, supported SKUs are for the upgrade, you'd complete that within Partner Center, and then you'd go into the applicable billing contract you want it synced to, and then you would sync the new subscription to the contract.
Okay.
What options?
When is it going to be available? I think we answered that. Next week is the plan. So look out for that.
What options do we have for making discounts on contracts? Would we fit? Sorry. Would we be able to apply a fixed amount in order to reduce a license? I'm sorry, I'm not understanding this question.
Yeah, so discounts, basically simple thing around discounts, you can apply a discount at the invoice level, which is going to apply at the billing contract level, or you can apply a discount at the subscription level. They both work in the system, right?
Right. And yes, we will be sharing the recording of this webinar.
Thank you very much. Looks like we went a little bit over. I appreciate everybody's patience. We'll talk about this again and again, I'm sure, for the foreseeable future. So thanks for joining us today and spending your morning, evening, afternoon with us. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Wrap up.
Have a good day.